Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. That's right.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Welcome to another Donnybrook. Lots to talk about. Let's meet the panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from the Big 550 KTRS, Bill McClellan from the Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from Substack and a founder of the Riverfront Times, Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. And before we begin, we want to say thank you to Sarah Lawrence, who has provided the art on the mantle, part of our rotating art exhibit program here at 9PBS. Thank you very much, and everybody can learn more. There it is. You can learn more by going to saralawrence.com. All right, where do we begin? How about with Josh Ferguson, who's the owner of Caldy's, Bill McClellan, a Ladue resident, and also happens to run some, I guess, marijuana dispensaries or something of the like. Well, he has a lawsuit with the state, or one of his businesses does, and the Attorney General for the state, Andrew Bailey, is representing the state in some part in this lawsuit action. And it also turns out that Andrew Bailey was the beneficiary of a fundraiser at the home of Josh Ferguson in Ladue. So Josh Ferguson has a lawsuit in front of the state. The Attorney General is part of the lawsuit, and the Attorney General is benefiting from this fundraiser at the Ferguson home. Any problems there?
Well, I mean, Andrew Bailey's kind of shameless, and that's fine. I don't get invited to Republican fundraisers. I wish I would have been, because I just wonder if they were smoking pot there. I mean, really, it was about pot. And were they toking around? I mean, when I grew up, the Republicans were kind of anti-drugs and anti.
Kind of.
And
just say no.
Mike Carson put Steve Tilley in charge of marijuana, and Josh Ferguson is running pot, and Andrew Bailey is there. I wish I'd have been there. I mean, I would have lit up.
Well, it is legal now.
I'm not offended by the fact that Andrew Bailey seems to have a soft spot in his heart for pot smokers.
Well, we have a member of Congress who was disciplined for pulling a fire alarm. This is Congress. I think we have reached such a dysfunctional level in leadership around the country. I'm not offended really by almost, I mean, it takes a lot to offend me. This does not offend me.
Well, it should really, in the sense that there was a time that not that long ago, certainly within the length of time we've been doing this show, that this would have been a huge scandal. I mean, it's just the idea, and I understand what you're saying, that it's just, well, numb, but I mean, the idea that a campaign fundraiser is being done by a litigant to the guy that's presumably, Andrew Bailey's best defense is he doesn't really get involved in lawsuits in Missouri. His main job is to file amicus briefs for Trump World. So, I mean, it's all he does. But it's scandalous, but it's so normal now that it's
That's right. That's right. And that's the sad thing. The numbness.
You were just quoting Bob Dylan so well. You were like right next, like, okay, you were there, man. But I think with him, every case has to be judged differently, and people get involved in stuff like this, and you say like, yeah, that's politics, or yeah, that's this, and then there's some people where there's just like a little alarm that goes off, and he sets one off at me where I think allegedly, I would say allegedly, but I think he's crooked. I think that, no, this is beyond what, you know,
potential scandal.
Yeah. But we look at him with the gambling machines. I mean, and we always refer to them as illegal gambling machines. They're slot machines, but he takes money from Steve Tilley, and so he's hands off.
Hang on a second. Is it any different, really, than when Rita Days and Sam Page took money from Boeing this
Big
summer.
difference.
At the same
Big
time,
difference.
they were supporting tax breaks for
Big
Boeing.
That's what I'm saying.
difference.
I think
There's no difference.
Big difference.
One is a litigant.
One
the
of them
other's
is the top law enforcement officer in the state of Missouri in a proceeding. No.
No.
It wasn't
Law enforcement
just
officer.
Sam
How
Page
about
and
when,
Rita.
excuse me, when Wesley
Big difference.
Bell gets money from attorneys when he's
Big
running for
difference.
U.S. Senate, how is it different?
Because if
when
they
those
have-
what if those attorneys have business in
if-
front of the prosecutor's office?
Boeing is like the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus. They stop at everybody's house. I mean,
The
honestly.
point is conflict of interest. It's not Boeing.
Look.
If there's a conflict of interest with Josh Ferguson, with Boeing, and with the lawyers who give to Wesley
I think
Bell.
philosophically, maybe you're right.
End of
But
subject.
But
No further questions, Your Honor.
But I think, like I said, there's just some where you say, like, okay, that's one thing, that's another.
This is
and
classic Charlie.
You made the ultimate point. The highest
and oranges.
law enforcement officer in the state shouldn't be involved.
Apples and oranges, Charlie.
You're making a good point in that the entire campaign's finance system is a form of legalized bribery, and that's just how it's structured. Why do you think these guys give money? Just to be nice? But there's a difference when you're talking about a law enforcement officer.
Wesley Bell, you mean?
No, I'm talking about a guy that's. I think it would be very inappropriate for someone that is actively in litigation against.
An entity.
I think he should not be taking
Can I tell you the
money
truth?
in an active thing. But the fact that they do it for a
on
living.
Republicans than you are on Democrats.
not
When
true.
Democrats do it, you are not astonished. You're
think
not
that's
freaked out.
fair.
It's totally fair.
No.
What?
If Scott Rosenblum threw a fundraiser for Wesley Bell and he was like, tomorrow I'll see you in court because I'm defending this murderer, we would say, like, what's that about?
And
right. So, no.
Scott
I don't think we
Rosenblum, as a matter of fact,
would. I
did
would.
give to Wesley
No,
Bell.
I'm
so
saying-
he better not have any business in front of the
But that's not how
prosecutor's
that.
office. Is that what you're saying?
Bill's trying to
I'm
explain
saying at
that
the
to
exact
you.
same time, there's a pending litigation right now. Hey, if Mr. Ferguson was not involved in this case and all that, I could care less. But he has a pending case.
Charlie.
It might be that Josh Ferguson and Andrew Bailey get together,
Smoke
they
the peace
share
pipe.
a joint, they figure things out, and they reach a settlement.
And Charlie,
Now, we're out of time on
there
this
is no
subject.
difference
Okay,
between Democrats and Republicans on this. I'm sorry, there isn't.
Wendy Wiese, I want to ask you about Lindenwood, a school in St. Charles, well-regarded, but it's cutting 10 athletic programs just a year or so after it went D1. So, the gymnastics team won the national championship this year, and the gymnastics team, the national championship gymnastics team at Lindenwood is being cut. That's kind of weird. But then Fontbonn's cutting 20 academic programs. We are reading now that Webster University is having huge financial problems, and Harris Stowe State University is on the verge of losing accreditation in February. What's going on with colleges in St. Louis?
I think that they are all colleges of a certain ilk. A certain profile, and I just don't know, because they always came with a fairly hefty, tuition. And once upon a time, that was okay. But today, with the advent or the continuing growth of online schools, I just think it's one of those adapt or die situations, and I think many of them have been, like in the case of Lindenwood, thinking that D1 would somehow propel them above the waterline wherever they were, and it's not enough. It seems to be too little, too late.
Okay, on Harris Stowe, I think they'll survive the accreditation thing that's coming up in February. This latest is they just didn't fill out a form on time or something, and the Department of Education dean is now gone, and he just started in January. It seems like it's great to have great plans, but you got to fill the forms out, and you got to do the minutia stuff.
That's the government. That's happening at every level of society.
Right, and then with Lindenwood, okay, they call these ladies and gentlemen and these athletes to the gym and announce one by one, your sport is cut, your sport is cut. They just, no warning, no anything. Now, they can stay and fulfill their scholarship if they want to stay at Lindenwood and not play the sport that they're there to play, so obviously they're going to go elsewhere. And I don't think Lindenwood knew they were going to do this at least 2 or 3 years ago. They knew they were going to go Division I in football. They knew the expense that was going to create before it actually started bringing some real money in. They knew this was coming, allegedly. I don't, but Alvin thinks they knew this was coming. So this was not like all of a sudden, what are we going to do? They knew this.
And I think
I thought that football was a revenue producer, a big revenue producer, no?
Well, it could
If you're
be, but it's
established.
not yet.
Yeah,
Right.
and if you're established, because even though they have that D1 status, there are a lot of schools that have been doing it a lot longer, and so it's going to take some
and to
time.
your point, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
No, to your point, Charlie, it just feels kind of heartless the way they did this, and the fact that they've got these kids that just got their championship. And I agree with Alvin. I mean, there's in general there's a tension between the big money-producing sports in pretty much everywhere, and across America, with the ones that are not revenue producing, and they tend to resent one another or whatever. Again, on one level, this idea that I think Alvin's right, because they're talking about they just did comprehensive planning. That does
They did that
not
before
make
the D1.
Wait a minute, you did the D1 thing first, and then you did the comprehensive plan? I think Alvin's on
the subject of sports, maybe I'll take this a little bit out of turn, but Liberty North won the state football championship this past weekend over CBC. The game was called with 3.5 or so minutes to go, Alvin, because of too many unsportsmanlike conduct calls in the fourth quarter. When was the last time you ever heard of a championship game ending early because the kids couldn't behave?
I've never heard of it. Now, Liberty North was winning 38-7, so it wasn't like they stopped the game, one team was on the 1-yard line and going to tie the game or something like that. But nonetheless, it's still unexcusable. And I wrote in my column this week that, I'm really goodbye to our prep and, young people's football season this year, because it started out September 1st, there was gunfire and a rampage. The week before that, Alton limited fans because of fights in the school. Vashon had a game called off also on September 1st because there were fights in the school and they were scared of violence at the thing. Then the poor youth coach was shot by a disgruntled parent because his son wasn't playing enough. Then this happened. And it's we got to calm down when it comes to especially youth sports. I mean, and both CBC and Liberty North should face some punishment from the High School Activities Association. This should not be allowed to slide. Okay, somebody needs to answer to this. And congratulations to Cardinal Ritter for winning the state championship, playing a clean season. God bless you.
In a different division.
Different division.
I agree, Alvin, that somebody should pay a price. On the other hand, the kids are just reflecting society. I mean, everything seems out of control. I mean, you look at the presidential debates, you look at Congress, people, self-control is vanishing.
That's right.
That's true. But you got two head coaches. And I said this. I said, you know what they should have done? They should have met at halftime and said, there's 3 minutes and 15 seconds left. We both got kids on our team that aren't going to see the field probably the whole time that they put a varsity uniform on. Let's put them in the game. Let's hand the ball off or take a knee, but these kids will be able to say, I played in the state championship game.
Good point.
That's a great
Okay,
idea.
Ray, I want to ask you about the St. Louis County Council, which is approving $14 million in budget cuts for next year's budget. It's only about 2.4% of the whole budget, but, you wonder why. They are cutting money if there's all that Rams settlement money, $170 million on the sidelines.
Well, I particularly would juxtapose it more with the fact that they just decided to give property owners, many of whom didn't need it, a tax break. And it just feels like the center doesn't hold. And I don't know the specific, I haven't studied their budget. Maybe some of these were cuts that needed to be made. I don't know the process. But it just seems like there's no vision. I mean, certainly the Rams on and I have a friend that watches our show that points out that we've collectively, in these contexts, leading with me, spent probably our ideas for Rams money probably add up to like $20 billion,
Well, the
which is fair. The Hartmann
right.
Mental Health Center and all the others.
Right.
But I'm not the only one. Everybody says, well, we should spend Rams money on that. And I think that's a pretty good point from a viewer. But, and And I think you could certainly make a case for if it was a short-run thing it's a fairly small percentage of the Rams money. It just doesn't feel like there's any vision, and I wonder why when you look at a county executive that doesn't even show up at the meetings.
Well, I was just going to say the council people are there. I'm not excusing.
At least they're there. Yeah.
I think at least they're there. And what do you think that before we go line item eliminate stuff, why can we have $2 million of the $170 million to keep this program going, or to do this, or keep these people employed? I mean, I'm not saying like let's throw all the money in general fund and just have Christmas time, but I think you could do it.
Some things need immediate attention.
And let's figure out what we can draw from.
Well, they do have $60 million in reserves, so they're afraid they're going to be drawing that down too much. But it's been said that about the average department in St. Louis County is only 90% funded right now because of lack of workers. Like with their 163 vacant positions open in the police department alone in St. Louis County. I'm not
being silly, but okay, we're broke. All right, okay, or we got problems with this. Everybody. Why aren't you lobbying, like right now, to legalize gambling in Missouri and already have a plan where we say, like, we're going to have 4 sports books in the county?
Okay, now, maybe you just paid your real property tax, personal property tax this week because it's due at the end of the month. How many people out there with expired tags are not paying their sales tax or their personal property tax? Maybe we would have a $13 million in budget cuts if people would just start collecting that.
Well, you are right about, technically, I didn't really think about that, but if you have an expired tag, that probably means that you haven't paid that tax.
You betcha.
I didn't really think about that before, Charlie.
Sometimes budget cuts are legit. I mean, no one's arguing that we don't have the benefit of looking at the budget. There may be programs that have outlived their usefulness, or because of staffing issues. There are going to be some of the cuts. Just because there's cuts doesn't mean they did something wrong, but it's sure strange to talk about this environment we're in. But, oh, by the way, we'll cut the property taxes for people that have a $500,000 home.
And the city's about to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Ray, I want to ask you about another detainee death. I think it's the 11th in 2 years at the city's Justice Center in downtown St. Louis. And it's sad that this was an attempted suicide that resulted in death, but we really don't really know. As we discussed last week, the Oversight Board has not been allowed to talk to inmates or corrections officers or view the hospital or the kitchen. And so you just wonder, okay, who's overseeing the jail? And shouldn't we all be alarmed that there are 11 deaths in 2 years?
Well, the first answer is no one. And the second answer is yes. We should be alarmed. But it's just, you talk about a constituency that doesn't have a great advocate at this point, and it's particularly somebody that I think he was accused of murder, this person. There's just nobody home to stand up for him. And it's a disgrace, quite honestly. And the mayor, who I've always been fond of, sent condolences, and it's like thoughts and prayers after a mass killing. At some point, there is no accountability. There is a jail director on whose watch this keeps happening. No accountability. We have a process of oversight that, for reasons nobody can seem to figure out, this administration, with the blessing of the Board of Aldermen, continues to resist, and I don't understand.
I'm not arguing the point with you, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think that has anything to do with this.
Well,
I think if we had the most efficiently run jail, it's just like prison. This happens.
I didn't say it did.
And I just can't. I can't pin this on oversight. I think people could tour that jail every day, twice a day, and I think this person would probably not be with us.
Well, that's true, Alvin, but still, you got to have somebody watching. I mean, we have scandal after scandal at the jail.
And promise after promise, promise after promise.
I think when people kill themselves in the jail, I don't think that's scandalous.
But that's what we're hearing, Alvin. But where's the third party that can kind of go in there and determine that the death did result from suicide? Don't forget,
we have a coroner. We have autopsy.
Well, and if a person has a mental health problem, they need to be looked at. They need to have some kind of resources.
And we are getting word from attorneys who are representing some individuals in there that the kids say that a lot of them are young people. They won't leave their cell because they're afraid of getting beaten up. We know that some of the corrections officers were allowing people to get beat up. We know that there was a huge riot at this jail just within the last 2 years.
And I want to respond to something Alvin said, because I do not want to say or imply that these deaths are the fault of the administration. It's actually the opposite, where having oversight, you would think if you were the administration with all this happening, that the one thing you'd want is to be able to say, look, we've welcomed, we have oversight, we're doing our best, these things happen. But when you combine their irrational resistance to having reasonable oversight with all this nonsense, we got to train these people. You don't have to train people to do oversight. The point is, it would be better.
It would be person.
I get it.
But
you're
why
just
not?
like
but basically, you are. You're saying that it's their fault.
No, I'm
that
not.
This guy is dead.
No, I'm not. I am saying just the opposite. I'm saying they won't let the oversight, and that the oversight would at least give the appearance that they were open to transparency.
If nothing else, the citizens who are part of the review board should be allowed to tour the jail, just like Bill has toured jails. I've toured jails. I imagine you guys have too. There's no reason to have to go through training. Did you have to go through training to tour jail?
No.
I didn't either.
You don't need training. And my point is, it is not the city's fault. It's the city's fault that it won't welcome oversight.
Well, speaking of jails, Alvin, what do you think about Jeffrey Boyd? He was a member of the Board of Aldermen, and he went to jail for bribery. I think there was also some fraud charges related to a car, but I could be wrong.
No, you're right.
But bribery's the big one. And he went about a year ago on a 3-year sentence, but now we're finding out that he might get out as soon as February because some of the sentencing guidelines have changed since he entered. So a guy went in for 3 years, but he might come out in about 13 months. What do you think?
I mean, it's white-collar crime, and it's I don't want to say he should stay in jail, but he should stay in jail. I'm sorry. What am I? Just like I hate everybody in jail. I want him to stay in jail. But no, Jeffrey Boyd needs to do his 3 years, at least, whatever, 2.5. You got to do better than that. I
think it's all, this federal set, I think Jeffrey Boyd is not, from any appearance, being treated any differently than anybody else. The federal sentencing is all driven, first of all, by guidelines, and also I think there's a sentencing commission that reviews these. And if he's not receiving different treatment than other criminals, whether they are white collar or not, I think he's entitled. He's asked for his. You can't exactly blame him for asking to get out as early as possible. And I think it's all driven pretty much by boilerplate guidelines and directives that if he's not getting treated specially, sure, he can get out.
Okay, and I'm not saying that he's getting a favor. I'm just saying that this seems to me that you need to do your time no matter who you are and no matter what the circumstance is, because whatever the guidelines are, that does not mean that everybody who makes this request gets it. So maybe he's a good candidate to turn down.
Well, I think the feds have a program now where people do get time cut off of their, they didn't used to. It used to be if they told you 3 years, you're going to do pretty much 3 years. But I think they've changed their thinking on that. And if you get 3 years, you probably are going to do 2.
And I think Jeffrey Boyd, I mean, he's not a threat to anybody. He really isn't.
But it's not the threat, it's the punishment, don't you think? Because he was supposed to be representing his constituents.
I understand that.
And instead, he was taking money.
I understand that. But if anything that we've been hearing about these stories, whether it's Y Down or the one at the Petromart, people who should be in jail aren't in jail. And a lot of times there's no room for the people who should be in jail because people like Jeffrey Boyd.
Well, I think there's also room in federal prison.
Yeah.
I don't know. There may be part of this, and I don't know the system that well, but there may be crowding issues in the federal prisons, and one of the ways you address prison overcrowding is by having early release of nonviolent people. Now, again,
of white-collar criminals.
And budgetary problems. I mean,
not
the
just white
quicker
collar.
they can get people out, the less expensive.
Well,
It's
if
not about him being
it's an
white.
overcrowding thing, that's one thing, but that hasn't been part of the report.
Federal prisons.
I thought members of this panel thought that white-collar criminals should do time just like,
He is doing time. He's doing time.
Alvin does.
I'm like,
A 3-year sentence becomes 13 months?
Well,
I'm
he's
down with
doing
that.
time and he's getting the same, and I don't think it's even got to do with white collar. Prisoners in the federal system are entitled, whether they should be under the existing guidelines.
Wait a minute.
How
What if
long
they
will he
wait,
be?
Ray?
That's all.
Ray,
How long
what
will
if they
he be?
storm the Capitol? Now, what if these people
They
start
get to
getting
say,
that out?
oh, a lot of them are.
Oh, man.
a lot of them.
Okay.
No, a lot of them are. No, most
Okay.
of them, I covered those. Most of them did not get hardly any time, and the ones.
No, the ones that are in there for 3 and
Okay,
5
okay.
years,
Well,
they get out in 13 months.
Some of the, oh man, sure, absolutely.
Hey,
What's his name? The shaman got out early.
Well, he
Before
said
we
he's
break,
only gonna
Bill
be a dictator
McClellan,
for the
Gabe
first
Gore, who's been on the job. We have just 1 minute to go. Gabe Gore, the new circuit attorney for St. Louis, gave himself a pretty good report card this week after 6 months. I think he's done okay. What do you think?
Oh, sure, and I think he's running again, and I can't imagine anybody running against him, a serious candidate. I mean, I think he'll be the next circuit attorney for sure.
He's done I think he
50%
deserves
increase.
a good.
Yeah.
He deserves
And
it. I mean, so far, he's done so many things well.
And
How
it's
you could
interesting
argue it?
because he was always a name bandied about to be U.S. attorney when Joe Biden won, and here it is 3 years later, and Joe Biden hasn't even appointed.
Does anybody know why?
And I just felt like, it was such that, I just didn't know if he could do it because he had such a tough act to follow that it was just.
Hey, I will say,
he's done a super job.
You
Yeah.
said one thing, that he was going to assemble a dream team of lawyers from the counties and from private enterprise, and I poo-pooed that. I said, who can do that? It looks like he did do
did.
that.
Oh, he
so,
did.
And
hats off to you, Alvin Reid. Let's find out what people had to say about last week's program, shall we? The downtown crime reduction statistic was a year-over-year report, and there hasn't been a change in the level of downtown activity from 2022 to 2023. It may even be up, depending on how you measure it. This is good news. Accept the positive and maybe compliment the police and stakeholders supporting extra patrols. That from Noel Furr of St. Louis City. The city did not collect taxes from pot sales, yet it can surely get our earned income taxes from those of us that actually work. That from Lori Sweet of St. Louis City. You can write us, care of 9 PBS. Use the zip code 63108. And we'd like to see your full name. Thank you, not just Dave or Bob. You can always email us at donnybrook@9pbs.org and use hashtag DonnybrookSTL on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can also call the 9 line at 314-512-9094. And you can also listen to us on your favorite podcast source, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. Thanks for joining us. By the way, program note, we'll be at the Schnucks Ladue from 5 to 7 a week from tomorrow. Hope you can join us as we raise money for the Salvation Army. See you next week.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.